Well, hi everyone, and welcome to a new edition of We Are Sunderland, as ever in association with our sponsors, the Fans Museum and Cospex Opticians. Thanks very much to them for their backing. Thanks for you for watching these vids. As we always say, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, then please give us a like, subscribe if you haven't, leave any comments, anything you want us to talk about. We do read them, we try and reply when we're on there. And if you're listening on the various podcast platforms that we're available on, then rate and review, because that helps us out massively as well. How you doing, Dom? You all right?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. I've just had a knock at the door there. I'm trying to think, have I got a delivery waiting to come? I don't think I have.
There's always a delivery.
Yeah,
always a delivery of something.
The thing for me is it's normally for the neighbours. I think that all the various drivers around here have sussed that more often than not I'm around.
You're in.
So I tend to be the collection man for the street.
Well, there we go.
I can't think. I'm thinking on the spot. I can't think of anything important that I'm waiting for anyway. So it's nothing that should take priority over what we're going to talk about here. For
Exactly. And what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about the game at the weekend. Obviously the draw with Watford. Dom was there with that. We'll have a bit of a chat about that. We'll probably have I was at the academy at the back end of last week when a couple of us got the chance to speak to Kristjaan Speman. So I'm sure we'll chat through that and a few of the bits and bobs that came out of that. And then obviously it's midweek action, Luton at the Stadium of Light on Wednesday night. So we will have a talk through that as well. So let's start the weekend, Dom. 2 points dropped, 1 point gained. It's always one of them, isn't it? It feels like, obviously 2 home games in a row now against sides who on paper someone would have expected to be. I mean, admittedly, Plymouth have gone and beaten Liverpool and Watford, played very well. So no game easy and all of that. But with the great win over Borough, sandwich kind of in the middle, it just feels like a couple of sticky home games, doesn't it?
Yeah, we were saying yesterday, weren't we? I think 5 points out of 9 from those 3 games, as impressive as and important as the Borough win was. 5 points out of 9 from those 3 home games feels like really the absolute minimum Sunderland would have expected to take from those 3 games. I definitely think it was points dropped rather than a point gained on Saturday for a few reasons, really. Yes, Sunderland equalised in the last minute, and for much of the second half, they didn't look like getting that equaliser. And I thought Watford were pretty good. Like a bit, didn't offer loads going forward, but tidy, neat. Managed the game really well after going 2-1 up until the last 5-10 minutes. But Watford are poor at home. They'd won 2 in 8. Was it 2 in 8 coming in? They'd lost 3 on the bounce. When Sunderland get themselves in front early on, you'd expect them to kick on from there, wouldn't you? Needless foul for the penalty. Obviously, great hit to then go 2-1 up for Watford, but then to miss the chances in stoppage time after equalising. Isidore and Alexic, 2 really, really good chances. And the first thing Regis Labrie said when he came in after the game was disappointing, which I think tells you that although they scored in the last minute, it didn't feel like a point gained.
So what do you put? I mean, no 2 games are the same, and we're probably potentially reading too much into it to try and get themes and ideas and everything. But I don't think in either game it was a case of the opposition coming up and completely shutting up shop and frustrating Sunderland, was it? Plymouth didn't really play like that. They did for parts of the game, but there was big chunks of the game where they didn't, and Watford didn't really either. So it's not really that the problem. And obviously, there have been players missing in both games. Job obviously was out the weekend, but it's not like Sunderland are injury ravaged at the minute. I mean, what is it? Just a case of you're going to get these little sticky spells in the Championship, or is it something more deep rooted than that? Do you think?
I think I was reading some Chris Wilder quotes yesterday. They beat Portsmouth, didn't they, on Saturday?
2-1, yeah.
Wilder slaughtered them afterwards and said we didn't deserve anything from the game. And there was a line of quotes in it where he said, look, you've got to accept that there are going to be games when you're like that. And I suppose the beauty is you find a way to win, but there can't be too many more of them. And I think that's probably similar with Sunderland, really. Yeah. There haven't been many off days or off nights this season, has there? And I don't think it's catching up with. I don't think the season's catching up with Sunderland, because I think they've got over a lot of their bad injuries. Now the squad's probably looking as healthy as it has done for a while, really, isn't it? I know you've still got Mundell and Watson out, and Bellingham was missing at the weekend, but you've got Samed fit now. You've got more attacking options. You've got Lafay having come in January, and the performance at Borough last week, although they were sluggish early on, was didn't suggest of a team that are maybe running out of steam a little bit. So I don't think that's the case, and I don't think it's complacency. I don't think Sunderland are underestimating teams at home. I think it was just one of those sluggish, sloppy, just didn't quite kick on as they should have done after going 1-0 up. Watford managed the game pretty well. But tomorrow feels important, doesn't it? Because of that. Yeah. Because Luton at home, another dreadful away record, really struggling this season. You're there tomorrow night. That feels like, on the back of those 2 home draws, feels like must win, doesn't it?
What are we thinking about the kind of, obviously Lafay's come in, been absolutely brilliant. Nobody would dispute that. But he has meant a little bit of a different lineup with him on the left-hand side. Slightly different to obviously when Mundle was playing there as another out-and-out winger. Obviously, Samed is in the mix now. Again, when he plays, slight tinkering there in midfield. You have a much more natural deep-line midfielder. Dan Neil plays in a more advanced role when he's playing. There have been not major changes, but definite little tweaks to the Sunderland side in the last month or so. It seems weird saying it because Lafay's arrival, he clearly has been brilliant. But has the overall changes in the last month or so improved Sunderland, do you think? Or is Lebris still a little bit feeling his way around how Samed, for example, is going to fit in there and what that means for the rest of midfield and where Lafay is eventually going to end up playing if and when Mundle and Watson are fit and all of that going on?
The Lafay, when Mundle and Watson are fit, that's still going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. But I think as things stand, I thought he was Sunderland's best player again on Saturday on the left-hand side. Until Mundle and Watson are fit, I think you absolutely keep playing him out there. When it'll be fascinating to see who misses out, won't it? Because Lafay is going to start in midfield. I suspect Neil will start as the holding midfielder. It'll be fascinating to see who out of Bellingham and Rigg. It's probably going to be Rigg who misses out, isn't it? Or do they move Rigg to the right in place?
I think they will in some games. Yeah.
But the Samed one, different. That's 2 home games now, isn't it? He's played Samed. Now, it was forced. It wasn't forced on Saturday, but interestingly, he was asked after it, was there no temptation to bring Mayenda in and put 2 up front? And Lebris but clearly said, I know 4-4-2's worked for us at times this season, but I think our balance is better in a 4-3-3. What is pretty clear was, unless he feels like, I think there's a real opportunity to exploit the opponent's weakness by playing a 4-4-2. I don't think he's going to play that, but I'm just not sure it works with Samed as the holding midfield and Neil a bit further on. The dynamic and the balance just didn't look right in the midfield for me on Saturday. That's nothing against any of them as individuals. I think Samed looks tidy. I just think as a balance, as a combination, it just didn't look quite right. Bellingham was a huge miss. Just his energy, his drive, his incision from the midfield. He'll go straight back in, won't he? It'll be providing he's fit. It'll be back to the 3, won't it? Tomorrow.
You'd imagine.
It still feels like Samed's opportunities are going to come when there's players missing or when there's injuries or suspensions or whatever. But I don't think the last 2 games have really will have given Lebris any real desire or appetite to needlessly tinker with his midfield and bring Samed in for games, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. And I mean, Samed to me feels like a player who you bring in a big away game against a playoff semi-final first leg, when the most important thing is you stay in the game. Away from home, I'm talking about here potentially. You stay in the game, you don't give a lot away, you make yourself harder to break down. That feels like what Samed potentially is going to be there for. It's just so happened, as you say, kind of forced, kind of not, that the 2 games we've seen him in so far haven't been games like that, really. They've been home games where you would expect Sunderland to be on the front foot, and it just feels like you don't really need him there in either game.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then you've got Brown. You've got Alan Brown coming back as well. So it'll be interesting.
He's playing for the under-21s tonight for a bit, isn't he?
Tonight, on Tuesday night. That's going to be the real interesting area, I think, isn't it? the defence, I was going to say the defence picks itself, but you've had Dan Ballard now, who's been fit for a old while and is having to settle for a place on the bench. Or Nyan and Metham are the first choice too, aren't they? The defence, I think, picks itself. The attack, Isidore's going to be your striker. I still think he'll go with Roberts on the right in the big games, and probably Mundle on the left when everyone's fit. Yeah. It's that midfield, isn't it? And the knock-on effect of the midfield on what that means for. So if Rigg isn't in the midfield, does he put him on the right instead of Roberts? If he wants Rigg in the midfield, does he put Lafay on the left instead of Mundle for games? I think that's going to be the interesting dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the classic. I mean, let's be brutally honest. For most of this season, the team completely has picked itself. You've known injury, unexpected injuries aside, you've been able to say pretty much with certainty what Sunderland's lineup was going to be for the vast majority of games this season. It doesn't quite feel as clear-cut as that at the minute. And like you say, it will probably feel even less clear-cut once Mundle and Watson are properly back in the fold.
I think the other thing as well is that, like, a point at home to Watford. I know Watford have been on a poor run and their away record this season isn't great. But a point at home to a team in and around the playoff places, it isn't a disaster. I think the Plymouth draw clearly is a bad result. But a Watford draw in isolation isn't an absolute disaster. It's the fact the teams above are pretty relentless at the minute, isn't it? Leeds, Sheffield United, Burnley, and it kind of feels like Sunderland are already playing catch-up ever so slightly. It kind of feels like you can't really afford too many of those slip-ups, doesn't it? That's true. It's credit to Sunderland that they find themselves in that position, but they now need to keep winning to stay there, don't they? Because Sheffield United are playing well, but are winning. Leeds are winning. Burnley just aren't conceding.
No, you make a good point there. It'd be interesting, obviously, on Wednesday night when Sunderland are playing Luton. Sheffield United are hosting Middlesbrough, aren't they? Which feels like a game, not necessarily they're going to slip it up in, but will test them. Leeds, obviously, I think, play tonight, don't they? Tuesday night. So Sunderland will know what they've done by the time they play. But I mean, that you're right. You're looking at Sunderland's results amid the backdrop of a battle for automatic promotion in which the three sides above them are making precious few mistakes. And so, especially at home, it feels like every point dropped really is a backward step. And that's, that's probably harsh. We do need to keep reminding ourselves where this team's come from, how good this season's been. But the flip side of that is Sunderland have got themselves into a great position. But to get over the line, certainly for top two, you're right. There's very little leeway.
I'm just looking at the table there. So the 31 played, all four of the teams. Leeds 66 points, Sheffield United 64, Burnley 61, Sunderland 59. Ordinarily, you'd say kind of Leeds are at 2 or 3 wins away from and providing the others don't win, from being in a position where you'd say, is it now a 3-way fight for one place? A Leeds looking pretty set. But then I do think we have to bear in mind everything that surrounds Leeds and just how they ended last season. And once the real pressure's on in the last few weeks of the season, they stuttered over the line. Well, they didn't even stutter over the line, did they? It cost them last season when they looked nailed on. I do think that if the other teams can just keep within reach of Leeds, evidence suggests that it's no guarantee they'll get themselves over the line in the last weeks. I think they're the best team in the league. I think that Leeds are the best team, but
next Monday's going to be interesting for Sunderland, isn't it? Going to Ellen Road. I mean, that's doesn't feel make or break. It's too early for that. But if Leeds were to win that game, then unless there's a big swing this week, that then is going to start being a pretty significant gap then. And again, Sunderland passed a massive test of their credentials at Middlesbrough, big atmosphere, ding-dong game, obviously went behind early in it, came back, all of that. Well, they're going to have probably an even bigger test of their mettle come Monday night. And I think that's another reason why, we'll get to the nitty-gritty of the Luton game in a minute, but I think that's another reason why this home game on Wednesday night feels really important, because you want to be going to Ellen Road off the back of a positive result, don't you? You don't want to be going there off the back of 2 home games where you've let chances for 3 points slip through your grasp.
Talking of a test of mettle, you won't want a repeat of Leeds Sunderland first game when you go to Ellen Road next Monday night, will you? Talk about rewrites, 90-minute rewrites on a night match.
Goodness me. Yeah, I'd be interesting to see the reaction Melier gets from when he goes to take that first kick.
Yeah, like you say, I think in isolation that Luton game feels like you need to win, doesn't it? But then even more so because of what's happened and ahead of what's to come. If you were not to beat Luton, then you've suddenly only won 1 of 4. You've failed to win 3 home games in a row, and you're going to face the ultimate championship test. So I think it's massive to go into that Leeds game with real belief. You were over at the academy last week speaking to Kristjaan Speman. Yeah. He spoke to the regional and local press just before Regis Labrise did his press conference. You've probably read various bits to come out of that, but what was he like? What were the kind of standout news lines and takeaways from that?
I mean, we say this every time. Fair play to Sunderland for doing it. They have become much more open and kind of accountable and willing to do this kind of thing in the last couple of years, really. And whatever, I know fans have very divided views on Kristjaan Speman. And there's been, I think, various stages in Sunderland's evolution in the last couple of years where his stock has veered wildly from being flavour of the month to absolutely not being. But what I would say about him is he is very open. He's very willing to put his neck on the block, as it were, and try and justify what's going on. Yeah, in terms of, so obviously strikers was a big kind of talking point, and he just kind of confirmed, I think, what we knew through the window, that Sunderland found it a very difficult window to try and sign a forward in. They made various moves at various points in the window. We obviously know all about Brereton Diaz. We know about Cannon. It's out there now that there was interest in Archer at one stage in the window. But I think what he was saying was we found it difficult because Wilson Isidore and Eliza Mayenda are doing so well. Regis Labrise is going to pick Wilson Isidore as his number 1 forward until there's an absolute reason why he doesn't have to, i.e. he's either injured or completely out of form. Well, there's every chance between now and the end of the season, if Isidore stays fit, he starts every game. So already you've got players who you're talking to are looking at it thinking, well, you've got a number 9 there already. Mayenda has shown, that as a 9, as a wide man, playing up front alongside Isidore, he can score, he can get assists. So he's going to be part of the mix between now and the end of the season. So that undoubtedly complicated their search for a striker. I think the other thing they didn't want to do was spend spend what in championship terms will be big money on a striker with an eye to trying to get them up, knowing that if they then do get promoted, you've got that striker on a long-term deal. He's probably not the one you want in the Premier League. We've talked about that. I think that was a part of their thinking. So it did end up going into deadline day that it was right, okay, what we're going to do. Now, obviously, in the last couple of days of the window, it becomes clear that Liverpool are going to be willing to loan Dans. They'd wanted him to play in that Champions League game against PSV the week before. So they'd been very clear via slot that nothing was happening before then. Dans comes on the market. Sunderland get him. Then we all know what happens with the medical. So Sunderland are then left in a situation at kind of tea time on deadline day, right? What do we do? And I think there was a number of reasons why they've decided that keeping the loan alive is the best course of option. First, they're not spending any money on this until he's fit. And I think that's an important thing to make clear on this, that financially they're not going to lose out until he's actually able to play. It keeps a good relationship going with Liverpool, which I think could be important further down the line if they want to sign loan players or whatever. I think Liverpool have really valued the way Sunderland have handled this. But I think more importantly than anything, what Speakman was clear to spell out was, look, the decision then really was nobody or potentially Jadon Dans at the back end of the season. Well, potentially Jadon Dans at the back end of the season, given that he wanted to come to Sunderland, given that he was really keen on the loan, given that he'd been playing in the Champions League the week before, felt like a bit of a no-brainer for them, and I can kind of understand that once it gets to that stage. Now, I do understand that some fans will be saying it shouldn't have got to that stage. I think there were reasons, as Speakman was keen to outline us, why it happened. I still think that criticism is valid to a degree. Sunderland went into the window knowing they needed a forward, and yet was, to a degree, scrambling around at tea time on deadline day. Well, clearly that's not ideal, but it was the way it ended up.
Tommy Watson?
Yeah, he was good on Watson, to be fair. I think the message that Sunderland are wanting to get over is we're not worried about where Tommy Watson's at in terms of his headspace or whatever. We're absolutely confident Tommy Watson will be here and give his all between now and the end of the season. I think what Speakman wanted to say was this wasn't a case of Tommy Watson wanting to force through a move. It was a case of Premier League clubs being interested, a Premier League club, obviously Brighton, making offers on the final day, but those offers were turned down. So it was never actually a case of Watson having to make a decision. Did he want to leave Sunderland? Now, Watson and his representatives were clearly willing to have those talks. But I think, as Speakman was saying, and I know he's kind of got to say this, but I think, as he was saying, you'd almost be worried about the motivation levels of a player on your books if he didn't want to talk to a Premier League club and at least see what they were offering and what it was all about. So, I think they're pretty comfortable about it. What I would say is I came away from that thinking there's probably a good chance that Tommy Watson doesn't stay a Sunderland player beyond the summer. That might, maybe I'm jumping, that wasn't spelled out. I need to make that very, very clear. But what was spelled out is the situation will be reassessed in the summer. And I think there's an expectation that clubs will be back in for Tommy Watson, put it like that. And then, again, there'll be a decision to make. Clearly, what league Sunderland are playing in will be a massive part of that. But that's kind of where it's at, I think.
And just a few other news lines. Sirkin and Neil's contracts on hold, or contract talks on hold until the summer.
Yeah, which, I've seen some fans kind of slightly worried about that. I mean, again, it's kind of not ideal. I think an awful lot of those kind of decisions just come down to the reality that Sunderland need to find out what division they're playing in next year. Because, as we kind of said to Kristjaan Speman, I think one of us asked, is it kind of a case that you're almost running a two-track thing here? One bit of planning for life in the Premier League, one bit for the Championship. And he kind of said, well, yes and no. There's some long-term strategic things that go on that it doesn't really matter what you're doing. As a club, you're doing those things. But yeah, when it comes to the nitty-gritty of recruitment and contracts, clearly come the summer, what league you're in is an absolute game changer in that. So I think that's a big factor of it with Sunderland, that at the moment, all of those kind of decisions, yes, there's things they'd like to do, but an awful lot of it's going to come down to what league they're in, because that then will dictate what level of contract you're able to offer, what type of player you want, all of that.
And just finally on Speakman, the last time we spoke to him, I think we were both there. We were both there, weren't we? It was after Labrise was unveiling. Yes. How different the situation is, because let's be honest, when we spoke to Speakman in the summer, Labrise had just been unveiled, and Sunderland were probably the great unknown in the Championship, weren't they, this season? What was the general feel as to how this season has played out and what the next few months might have in store?
I think excitement. He's a pretty competent fella, Kristjaan Speman, as I'm sure anyone can know. So, I think he would say we always knew it was going to be. Yeah, well, effectively, yeah, maybe not quite to the level, but I think he would say we always felt Labrise was the right man. Otherwise, we would have gone for him. We always thought we had a good squad. We always knew we had exciting players. We always felt we'd underachieved massively in the second half of last season. All of that. So, I think there's excitement about what could become. I think there's a degree of satisfaction at the job that's been done so far. But I don't think it's, God, we're doing so well. I can't believe how this is going. This is amazing. I don't think it's that. I genuinely think it's, well, yeah, this is where we want to, this is part of the journey. This is where we want to be getting towards, but all of that. I think it's that more than, Christ almighty, we're fourth in the league. Isn't that brilliant?
To wrap up then, Luton, home. I'm not going to start talking about that away game again. I've trunted on about that enough on these months over the last couple of months. But I was chuffed. We spoke to Luke O'Neill after the game on Saturday, and I said to him, I've trunted on about that Luton away win, but I said that was the first game where I kind of thought, yeah, this Sunderland team. And he said, yeah, I'm the same. He said that is probably one of the proudest I've been of the team, because the challenge we faced that night, it was just kind of the belief that gave us as to if we can overcome a challenge like this. It's not good. Playing Luton at the Stadium of Light is very different.
Say, it should be different, shouldn't it?
Should be a home win, shouldn't it? New manager, new team, new look now. It should be a home win.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, you know, I know, as you said, we said that with Plymouth, we said that with Watford, but yeah, I think Sunderland will win. I think Sunderland will win on Wednesday night. I think. Let's go with my old favourite, 3-1. 3-1 Sunderland.
I'll go 2-0. Job returns with a goal and Isidore scores a late second half.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing this before, obviously, Abrissa's presser later on today, but Job will play, won't he? It's you were there. It sounded like nothing too serious.
The indication was he wanted to play at the weekend, but Sunderland understandably said, well, no, we don't need to take the risk. But Labrie said afterwards, we expect him to be back for Wednesday. If a manager says that, then unless there's been a complication, it's always pretty
between then and
clear,
now,
isn't it? Yeah.
Well, let's hope it happens. Enjoy the game if you're going. As I say, it's me there on Wednesday night, so that'll be good. Keep an eye on the We Are Sunderland site. There is still a subscription offer available there, just £1 a month to get you going. You can obviously read everything we're doing. All the build-up to the game will be on there. All the post-match reaction, analysis, reviews, all that kind of stuff. Give us a subscribe and a like on the old YouTube channel if you haven't already. Have a good week. Enjoy the game. And we'll be back ahead of the Leeds game to preview that. So enjoy yourself, and thanks for watching us here at We Are Sunderland.